This is a brand new makeup of the committee, actually, isn't it? I think.
It is.
So I think it's probably good for us just to do round the table about who we are, where we come from, if that's all right. Starting myself, I'm Susan Hinchcliffe. I'm leader of Bradford and chair of West Yorkshire Transport. Peter, who are you?
I'm Councillor Peter Carlill. I'm here as the Deputy Chair of Transport with responsibility for bus and active travel.
And then we also have Councillor Eric Firth.
My name is Eric Firth, Councillor Eric Firth. I'm Deputy Chair of the Transport Committee with responsibilities for rail.
Thank you very much. And then we'll go around the table, starting with Rotimi.
Hi everyone, my name is Rotimi. I'm the Committee Service Officer for this committee. Thank you.
Miles Larrington, Committee Services Officer.
Councillor Moses Crook, Deputy Leader Kirklees and Transport Portfolio Holder.
Councillor Matthew Morley, Cabinet Member for Planning and Highways at Wakefield Council.
Councillor Del Ray from Leeds for Bramley and Stanningley Ward.
Councillor Scott Haslam from Featherstone Ward in Wakefield.
Good afternoon, Councillor Tony Wallace from Wakefield Council.
Good afternoon everybody, Councillor Abdul Hanan from Headingley High Park in Leeds.
Councillor Andrew Pinnock Kirklees from Cleckheaton.
Good afternoon everyone, my name is Fatima Khan Shah and I am the West Yorkshire Inclusivity Champion, which is a role advising the Mayor on equity and inclusion and is shared with the health and care system.
Afternoon everyone, Richard Orr, Area Director for the North for Arriva.
Good afternoon, Paul Moses. I'm the Network Manager for Arriva Yorkshire.
Hi everyone, I'm Megan Hope. I'm the Operations Director for First Bus in North and West Yorkshire.
Hi, Toby Patrick Bailey, Route Programme Director, Network Rail.
Good afternoon everybody, Darren Allsop, Stakeholder Manager at Northern Trains.
Hi everyone, Rachel Marsden, Stakeholder Development Manager from Transpennine Express.
Hi, good afternoon, Graham John, Head of Regional Development Stakeholders Communities at Transpennine Express.
Afternoon all, Natalie Sykes, Private Sector Member representing the West Yorkshire Business Board.
Hello, I'm Councillor Neil Buckley from Woodley Ward in Leeds.
Hi, Councillor Debbie Davis from Bradford Council, Baildon Ward. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Councillor Amjadman, Keity Central Ward, representing Bradford District Council.
Good afternoon everyone, Councillor Matthew McLaughlin from the Corn Valley Ward in Kirklees. I'm also the Transport Engagement Lead for Kirklees.
Hi, I'm Caroline Firth. I'm a District Councillor in Keighley East in Bradford and I'm Transport Engagement Lead for Bradford Council as well.
Good afternoon everyone, I'm Councillor Chris Steele from Wolfdale Ward in Bradford.
Councillor Sarah Courtney, I'm Lead Member for Regeneration and Transport, Calderdale Council.
Hello everybody, I'm Helen Elton, I'm Head of Transport Policy at the Combined Authority.
And Dave Haskins, Strategic Head of Major Projects at West Yorkshire Combined Authority.
Afternoon everyone, Tim Taylor, Director of Transport Services here at the Combined Authority.
And I'm Simon Warburton, Executive Director for Transport.
Lovely, thank you very much. So we're quite an array of people here this morning, including the operators for bus and rail, so we've a lot to get through. Have we got any apologies?
Yes, we have apologies from Councillors Alex Ross Shaw, Howard Blackburn, Colin Hutchinson, Lisa Martin, Tony Margaret, Jonathan Pryor and Kate Ravilius.
Thank you very much. So declarations of disclosure of pecuniary interest. Has anyone got any interest to declare? No, not seeing any. Exempt information. There is no exempt information today, as far as I'm aware, on the agenda. So no exclusion of the press and public. Minutes of the last meeting of Transport Committee held on the 16th of April. Not everybody, of course, was here because it was an old committee and we're in the new committee. But for those of you aware, is there anything in there that you've got issue with, or are we happy to pass that as a correct record of that meeting? I see nods, so I'm happy to propose that. Can I see a seconder? Councillor Carlisle, all those in favour please show. Thank you very much, that is carried. So, moving on to the governance arrangements that were passed at the last combined authority meeting. Obviously you should see your name in this paper somewhere, otherwise you're in the wrong meeting. But hopefully it's quite straightforward. Steve, Simon, is there anything you need to add on?
No, simply that, Chair, that the Combined Authority annual meeting was on the 19th of June, and at that meeting the terms of reference and committee membership set out in Appendix 1 and Appendix 2 accordingly were approved, and therefore we are requesting that the Transport Committee notes those arrangements as agreed at the annual meeting.
Thank you very much. Can I see all those in favour please show? That is carried. Thank you very much. So moving on to substantive items, obviously around bus and rail today really. So the first item is about transport operations and bus. There's a lot of data in there. Tim, do you want to give us some opening remarks before we move to questions on the operators?
Yes, thank you, Chair. And I thought I'd just take you through a couple of the highlights, if that's okay, in terms of some of the key findings in the report. I thought it might be useful to start in terms of passenger trends and transport information. Members will note in the paper that we have continued to see stagnation and in some areas decline in terms of patronage over the most recent period, and that's borne out in both the numbers, but also set out in 3.6 as more of a national trend, and this is being seen again across the country substantially as well. You'll note that we have seen some variations as well set out in 3.4 by district, so not all of that decline is being seen equally across the region. And also in 3.3 you'll see that that is also varying by the cohort, the types of passengers that are seeing levels of decline vary. Moving on, I thought it might be useful to pull out some of the satisfaction information. So for members' awareness, if you weren't aware, the Combined Authority undertakes an annual Perceptions of Public Transport survey process, and we've had the most recent set of those results published lately. I think what it does is bear out and reflect the continued importance that people see in local bus services. So in 3.11, the increasing importance by which people see bus services, and also generally the levels of satisfaction, which are broadly consistent with prior years. No great surprise, affordability through that survey process is equally important for members of the public. And again, you'll see set out in 3.11 that those scores have steadily increased over years, which is reassuring to see, but also in doing so probably makes reflection to and should be recognising of the work that we've done in terms of Mayor's Fairs activity for the last few years. Moving forward, you will also see in that survey some satisfaction survey results around buying tickets, and again reassuring that people are continuing to see an increase year on year in the satisfaction of purchasing of tickets. We believe that is at least in part attributable to developments that we've made on the M-Card app in West Yorkshire over recent years, but also the increase in terms of the prevalence of contactless payments for bus operators, and also in terms of the rollout of the Mayor's Fair, again in terms of simplification of that approach. Members probably should also note under personal safety there's some interesting information in respect of the perception of safety that people see in terms of the use of the network more generally, and there's some clear differences between the perception of safety between daytime and nighttime as well. Moving a bit further on in terms of the paper, members will see that we have information in respect of our approach to management of timetables. I recognise that this is an area that members are clearly both interested in and frequently are in contact with us about. We have put in place for this year now a set of key performance indicators that you will see at the top of page 22, which set out both our ambitions and our commitments to maintaining timely information and distribution of the timetables across the network. Similarly, and linked to that, we have continued commitments in terms of rolling out real-time information. So again, you'll see on 322 information about rollout of a further 200 real-time units across the region. Again, very much linked to our ambitions and commitment to providing timely and good quality information to passengers. Again, moving forward, you will see information around mayor's fares. So again, for members that are not aware, we have the scheme in existence now confirmed through till the end of December of this year. As part of the comprehensive spending review, in recent times there's been commitment from DfT to extend the national scheme through till March of 2027. And as a combined authority, we are working on what our response to that is in terms of any potential further continuation of our scheme. None of you can equally have, hopefully, avoided to notice the launch of the Weaver network brand. And again, the paper just gives a brief bit of information around both the launch of that process, but also some of the public-facing information that we're now starting to provide, and a commitment to take to the combined authority later this year a plan which describes how we will start to implement that brand across our network and in time. In terms of passenger engagement, moving on to page 29, again, just a brief update here. We continue, and with support from operators, for which we're grateful, continue to do various engagements with members of the public, be that the gate line trial that we're doing on the railway for ENCTS pass holders, the events that we've done in Bradford, which have seen over 500 engagements in terms of elderly and disabled passengers, in terms of encouraging them back onto the general network, and all those things are important to us in terms of getting people back into both Bradford city centre and onto the network more generally as well. Last but not least, and again, no great surprise, an area of interest in terms of network performance. You'll see under 3.55 information about our latest performance on punctuality and reliability. I think it's reassuring that our overall levels of service cancellations, so our reliability level across the total network is now under 2%, which is reassuring. By no means should we be complacent that is the case, but again, it's an area that we'll continue to focus on, and you will see in Appendix 2 some further information in terms of service-specific performance that we brought last time, and an evolution of the reporting information that we provide through that. Last but not least, I shall quickly just draw our attention to some service change activity. So again, we've made some service changes across the network, both in terms of park and ride, but also more general network changes as well, set out in 3.60 to 3.66. And I think, for us in particular, as a combined authority, making sure we strike the balance of the use of our bus service improvement plan funding, both to enhance the network and protect the network as part of our commitments towards bus franchising, remains unchanged. And finally, a brief explanation at the back of the paper, which I don't intend to dwell on, but some further information around some of the investments we're making across our estates and our assets in terms of updating the likes of Dewsbury, Bradford, Leeds and Huddersfield as well. Oh, and Heckman as well, of course. So, Chair, I shall stop there, but happy to invite questions on any of the detail in the paper. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So there is, as I say, a lot of data there. I know councillors will have questions. We're also grateful that we have Arriva, First Bus and Transdev here. So thank you very much to the bus operators coming here. So we'll open to questions first, and then perhaps afterwards, if the operators want to sort of conclude with any closing remarks, that'd be really helpful. So can I see indications? Councillor Crook, Councillor McLaughlin, Councillor Buckley.
Thanks very much. I just wanted to ask a question really about the loss of patronage that we're seeing. So 3% loss of patronage, which is concerning. And I realise this was part of our modelling and part of the justification for the positive move towards franchising. But I wanted to know, and there's a corresponding reduction in routes of 3% as well. So I wanted to know, and I'm not sure if this is a question for officers or for operators, if there's anything more we can do to stop the loss of service or loss of service frequency, as it often is. And also whether it's in line with the modelling that we had as we move towards franchising, because there'd have been an expectation in loss, but obviously if there's a loss of service and a loss of patronage beyond our expectation, that might have impact on our ability to invest in the early stages of our new franchise model.
Thanks, Councillor Crook. So I'll move first of all to Councillor McLaughlin and then Councillor Buckley. They will take them in threes, I think, at the moment.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, a couple of points from me. The first, I'd like to sort of ask both operators and officers what work is being done to improve the ghost bus problem. We're getting all this new real-time information input in at bus stops, which is brilliant, but are we any closer to sorting out the technical problems that mean that people are expecting buses that then don't arrive? And the second point on the mayor's fares, just to ask, under the previous government, it was the case that because our scheme was older than their scheme, they would not subsidise our fares in the same way they were subsidising the rest of the national fares, and we were having to make up the difference from our BSIP funding. Is that still the case, or has a change of government brought a change of policy?
Thank you. And Councillor Buckley?
Yes, thank you. I also wanted to mention the patronage situation, in particular the slightly alarming figure about the drop in passenger journeys. I think that's on page 17 to 18, which indicates a 29% decline over this period. And in addition to that, I wanted to bring up something which is referred to on pages 20 and 23 and 24, which is this audio machine at bus stops. I think it's called the e-ink machine. Now, I've got 2 or 3 questions here, Chairman. Do you want me to ask them now? Okay. I've got some figures here about the number of machines which we have, and I just wondered whether it was the intention to expand this across as many bus stops as possible in the region. Is that the intention? And in terms of maintenance, how often are these checked? Because I had a resident who came to me and said that she's not particularly old, but she's losing a sight, which is very distressing for her, very depressing. But she's getting about as much as she possibly can, using these machines in particular. But she said that she came across 9 machines which weren't working. So that's another question. And incidentally, the machine on East Parade in Leeds, just up here, when I walked past it the other week, on a very quiet morning actually, I pressed the button and you couldn't hear the message. You could hear it working, but you couldn't hear the message because of the ambient noise, which was relatively low. And then finally, I have some figures here which I just jotted down, and they'll be wrong, but it gives the gist of it, about machines per ward. And I just assumed that, is it the case that there are more machines in more heavily used bus routes? For instance, there are 36 in Middleton, 42 in Holbeck, 45 in Morley, but only 11 in Kirkstall, 3 in Wortley, and 2 in Alwoodley. So if I could have some information there, please. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll go to Tim on those. There's quite a few there, Tim, if you can be...
Yeah, no, happy, Chair, to take those
answers.
in turn, thank you. So in terms of, Councillor Cook, your first question around patronage and network decline, I think in answer to your question, we are doing the things that we think we can within our control. So both continued use of bus service improvement plan funding to protect and enhance the network, so superbus schemes, frequency enhancement or frequency protection. Things like mayor's fares completely help as well in terms of keeping fares lower than they would otherwise be through a commercial network. But as I said in my opening remarks, this is by no means us being complacent in terms of the things that we need to do to intervene on the network, particularly to protect that network in terms of its baseline expectations through to bus franchising starting in March, April 2027. We still have more BSIP funding to spend. We know we are likely to get an equivalent of BSIP in 26-27 too, and we will need to take decisions in due course as to the relative balance of network protection versus enhancement for that. Clearly what we can't do is tell operators what to do with their commercial network in that intervening period, and we have to react to those changes as they land. But I think making sure that we do strike that balance, but maintaining a network that then can operate in a franchise environment will be key. So I think that's a summary answer, but that manifests itself clearly quite differently in different parts of the network as well. And again, happy to have conversations individually with members outside of this committee chair if they want to talk about local specifics as well. Turning to your question, Councillor McLaughlin, ghost bus problems. We have commitments from operators. I may ask them to comment on what they're doing because largely it is within their control to manage that issue. But again, we have commitments to solve that, and it's a conversation that's been brought up at Bus Alliance on more than one occasion, to my recollection. on Mayor's Fairs, so you were right, because our scheme started ahead of the national scheme. The original requirement from the Department of Transport was that we fully fund the cost of the reimbursement to bus operators for the subsidised tickets that we had. We have now managed to get DfT to allow West Yorkshire operators to join the national scheme, which is great news. So we have that arrangement in place with the operators in the room. We continue to still add subsidy to that because we're subsidising it below the national fare cap. And we also have our scheme extended to the day saver, which is not clearly part of the national scheme. They only cap singles. So we have reduced our exposure to the cost through that. It hasn't eliminated it, but it's certainly helped. Last but not least, Councillor Buckley, so your series of questions. The 29% that you make reference to was since 2010, if memory serves me right, in the paper. So again, no cause for complacency. That is a significant drop, but a drop that is consistent nationally on bus patronage. And again, probably no great surprise as to why we are looking and pursuing franchising as an alternative operating model to run buses to try and both arrest and reverse that decline. On e-ink, so the units that are in place at the moment are just clearly a trial basis. We don't have any predetermined views as to how many stops that we intend to roll them out to, but again, happy to have conversations with any ward members if they would like to see some of those trial units in their area, because clearly they are beneficial in terms of, you know, how they operate and the information that they provide, but making sure that information is both up to date and useful. And then we'll no doubt come to a view in due course as part of the bus franchising process on how many units we intend to roll out. Eventually, we are doing a piece of work in terms of what we call our customer proposition. So this is setting out our minimum customer service standards on a franchise network and what that means in terms of customer service offer, both in terms of things like timetable information, but also more generally for contact centre information, complaints, lost property and so forth as well. You are correct in respect of some of the background noise issues. So Leeds City Centre, it's a known issue. We've had conversations with the Pocklington Trust on this particular point, striking a balance between getting the volume appropriate for people who are partially sighted and have visual impairment issues, but not having them so loud that they are a problem for the wider general public. If there are issues, you know, technical or otherwise, again, I'd encourage members to let me know, let the Combined Authority know, and we'll go and look at individual units where needed. And equally, I think your assumption on them being more prevalent in more heavily used bus routes is correct. We have kind of design standards and minimum thresholds in terms of the use of those real-time units. Again, probably not for a detailed discussion here, Chair, if you're okay with that, but again, happy to pick up specific points if there are places that people feel it might be useful but might just fall below that threshold. So I'll stop there, thank you.
Thanks. I mean, I think it might be useful, that e-ink thing, if we could have perhaps at some point tell us when the date is you're going to look at it properly, and then let's make a reasonable decision based on the evidence. So if we can just have that sort of factored in, I think probably with Peter leading on that, that'd be really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
And we'll keep people informed. Right, I've got Councillor Courtney and Councillor Morley and Councillor Firth.
Thank you, Chair. I've got two sort of broad areas. One is around passenger trends and the other is about passenger information. Passenger trends, it'll come as no surprise to people who know me on this committee that I'm not very happy around some of the bus services in the bits of Calderdale and the reductions. So I'm just looking at, so other colleagues have mentioned around the reduction in services and that we've got reduction in patronage and how those things are related. And I just sort of think that we need to really think about how we can help. We all of us want there to not be a reduction in patronage, and reducing services just feels like completely the wrong way to do that. And especially sort of heading in towards franchising, so it's really important for us all to have good services. Now, in 3.61 and 3.62, we've had reductions in the Upper Valley of the 591 service, and really appreciate that the Combined Authority have stepped in to support the evening and weekend services. But it's been noted in the report that the service between Halifax and Burnley has been reduced to an hourly service. along with the relatively recent reduction between Rochdale and Halifax. So these are three big towns, there's Rochdale, Burnley and Halifax, where the bus services have just been really greatly reduced, and that's not working for the people who need to use those services to access work, training, education, health services, as well as leisure and cultural purposes. And in fact, I've received a petition from with over 2,000 signatures from people who live in the Upper Calder Valley and that area that I've been asked to pass on to first, so I don't know if you want me to pass that on to you. Saying that they want, please stop the planned reduction of bus services to 1 an hour between Burnley and Halifax, and to reinstate the Rochdale Halifax to 2 buses an hour, because people are just not able to, it's just not working. People can't rely on an hourly bus service to get to work, get to hospital appointments, get to education and the like. So that's my first point, is just basically a plea to ask you to really reconsider that. And I know you're citing commercial services, commercial reasons, and I know that that's all been, and I know you have a duty to your shareholders and all of that sort of stuff. But actually, the more you reduce them, the more the service goes down. And I just think, so that's the first one. Sorry to bang on about that, but I've got to speak up on behalf of people in Calderdale. The second one is just around, there's a real issue around passenger transport information. This came up at our recent Talking Transport Forum in Calderdale, about the travel information not being accurate regarding late running buses, cancellations, and just hoping that when we come to, can we see improvements in this, even in the pre-franchising context? The timetable on the roadside timetables, there's been a real problem with those, not always being updated in time after service changes have been taking place. And we know that the Combined Authority are attempting to resolve a resourcing problem, but it really does cause issue for people. And then just something along the branding for the Weaver network and the bus stops, and just wanting to make sure that can we have a confirmation that if new bus shelters and bus stop improvements are being implemented, that they're going to go straight in the new Weaver livery, rather than going in the old Metro one and then having to be replaced. So sorry for all the questions. Well, not really, because that's why I'm here. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Connor. Councillor Morley.
Thank you, Chair. It's really pleasing for me to read a report. It's not often you get this and mention the Wakefield District and new bus services. So I really do thank you for what you're doing. We have obviously had devastating and massive cuts across the Wakefield District. So I do thank you for the work and support you've given us in the Wakefield District, because I really do not know where we'll be without your support on this. So it's just really, I do complain a lot and have a go, so it's rightly to only praise when you have done something. So they've been really, really welcome. I mean, the one out from Wakefield to the Sculpture Park has been really well received. It's something long asked for, and some of the additional services and Sunday service. So I just say thank you.
Very good, thank you very much. I wasn't anticipating that. Thank you very much. Councillor Firth, Caroline.
Thank you. I just wanted to talk about safety. Tim said, you said the safety figures are perception, but we talked about this last year and we said we didn't know whether they were perception or not, because we'd not had the crime figures and no analysis had been done on that. And it was going to be brought to a meeting after that, and it hasn't been. So I was wondering if that can be done, please, this time, because we need to know if it's perception and then have that discussion with the public, and it might help increase patronage if we know that it is perception, and then can show them the data and encourage people to use the bus network. Also the stats haven't improved. We're doing the same things and getting the same results, so who's working on a hypothesis and what will change this year to improve those figures for next year? I wondered about the Violence Against Women and Girls Weeks of Action and what they involved, and also there are 113 safety and revenue support officers in Manchester on the network at the moment, post-franchising. So how are we going to learn from that model, and how will we improve safety and perception of safety after franchising here. Oh, and also, totally unrelated, that you asked in the report about the presentation of data for the best performing routes, particularly because they involve Keighley and shorter routes. As a Keighley councillor, I'd appreciate if we could keep those in, but the eight suggestion would be a good one for me.
Thank you, Councillor Firth. So I'll leave the first bus, the petition to first bus to answer. So Tim, can you just go on about the late running and the real-time information for Councillor Courtney?
Yeah, no, absolutely. If I can take the point about timetable information, and again, operators may want to comment on their involvement in the management of real-time information. Clearly, we're reliant on them to cancel services in their systems for it to propagate through to ours. We recognise that isn't always done as well as we would hope, and again, through the bus lines, we're trying to encourage improvement in that, and I think we are seeing it, but it needs to still go further. As I'm sure you'd expect us to say, through franchising, we're setting minimum standards in that, but that is a way off for certain parts of the district as well. I'm happy to go on record in terms of our on-street paper timetables not being good enough in terms of being updated. Part of the reason, or the main reason for me introducing the KPIs this year is to shine a light on that and to make sure that we've got some way of measuring what our service expectations are on that. So, I'm holding that team in my directorate to account and giving them a little bit of a hard time, frankly, to make sure we hit those standards. It is largely a resource issue, but we need to get that resource fixed and get our processes right. So I just, I would ask for some degree of patience, but equally please keep raising those issues where you see them, because I can use that as evidence to prove that we have to get better.
Weaver?
In terms of Weaver, so I think there's a paper described. We are in the process of taking a paper to the Combined Authority in September. That is the plan that will describe this approach. The underlying principle is that what we're not going to do is roll it out to stops unless it is a new stop or replacement stop that we would otherwise put in place. There are different programmes of stop replacement that are taking place across the Combined Authority at the moment, and we are, I was going to say we are incorporating those changes into those programmes of work to make sure that we are spending that money wisely. So it is likely that you'll also see it on significant asset changes, so things like Heckman Dwight bus station, for example. It is inconceivable that we'll be rebranding significant asset refurbishment or build in anything other than Weaver going forward.
And then, Simon, do you want to tackle the safety issue?
Yeah, certainly. So, firstly, you're absolutely right, Councillor Firth. We do need to bring a report back, so I'll absolutely make sure that is on the next agenda. We also need to build further on the PCSO model that we have at present, where we've got 15, a team of 15 effectively PCSOs across the conurbation. Where that works, it definitely has demonstrated that it builds confidence within the travelling public, but that number is spread over 800 square miles of West Yorkshire, which is clearly a huge challenge. I was just checking back on the numbers in Greater Manchester. So in Greater Manchester, there are 50 travel safe officers dedicated to the Metrolink system in particular, and a further 113 travel safe support and enforcement officers across the bus network. I'll get the full information out, but my recollection is that quite a significant number of those officers are PCSO equivalent trained frontline staff of transport operators, so this doesn't all necessarily have to be a net additional cost, and I think that's an aspect that we need to look into as we pick up now with our market engagement, looking forward into franchising. So very grateful to have the challenge. We will bring back quite a fulsome report next time that goes into the data, but I think also starts to look at comparative provision across a few different city regions to set out where we are in comparison with others.
Thank you. It's about giving people confidence to use buses, isn't it? So I'll just go to first of all for about the petition that Councillor Courtney raised, and if you want to also alongside that just talk about patronage. Obviously that's come up a lot, about how, you know, what can we do collectively to increase patronage.
Yeah, of course. So I'll start with the service reductions. So yeah, listen, we hear the frustration. It isn't ever our intention to do this, and as an operator we carry 25% of our services are loss making, and we are able to position them up because of the other services that we have. So patronage is a big reason as to why we've had to look at cutting services, and we've seen a 10% reduction in patronage in the Calderdale area year on year, which obviously means some of those services that weren't loss making and were breaking even have gone into that space. And so what we've done is we've looked at that patronage data, and we've looked at where the network is being utilised more, and that's led to the decisions that we've made. Clearly you've got a petition, and feel free to share that with us, and we're happy to have more conversations with you offline about that. But yeah, that you already quoted its commerciality, and that's the reason we've had to do it. From a business perspective, we can only carry so many loss-making services, and it is a real issue for us across the whole of West Yorkshire. We've seen a 13% reduction in patronage, mainly around young people and adults. What we're seeing is the short hop services, so services less than a mile. People are choosing to walk. The weather's been fairer this year, and that is driving some of that. You mentioned that there was obviously less journeys, that's why, that's what we're seeing. So in terms of patronage, we're always keen to talk about how we do bus prioritisation and work with the council around where we can make the services faster, make them a little bit more frequent, to really encourage people, commuters, people who are coming out for tourism, to use our bus services. And clearly it doesn't help anyone to be sat in congestion, but when the bus is sat in congestion too, it's not encouraging people to get onto those services. So listen, yeah, patronage is a big concern for us, and we think that as we get into the winter months, we'll see those short hop journeys increase again, but it's a massive fall off of 13% is something that, you know, we've not really seen before. And then in terms of ghost buses, we've been asked to comment on that. So we are looking at technology around auto cancellations. So there are numerous systems that need to be updated that then push that message out into the public eye. We've got some technical issues around that, but we are hopeful that once we can get all of those bugs out of the system, it will massively improve. There's a manual element to this, and when people have to put manual things into multiple systems, human error occurs. So auto cancellations is something that First Bus are looking at, and we will continue to push that and continue to work as hard as we can on making that technology go live. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll revisit some of those, but I've got other people wanting to speak. So Councillor Pinnock, Fatima, and then Councillor Davies and Councillor Steele.
Thank you, Chair. Customer information is obviously of great importance to everybody, and I'm very pleased that Councillor McLaughlin mentioned ghost buses, and I think it would be very helpful if they were got out of the system altogether, because trying to understand when buses are going to turn up is very difficult sometimes. But if there are buses that shouldn't be there for whatever reason, then we need to get rid of them. But the point I was going to make in relation to that was, it's very noticeable travelling into Leeds from Cleckheaton that when you cross the boundary into Leeds, there's a lot more information at bus stops about what buses are coming. We don't seem to have very many in our part of Kirklees. I don't know about Matthew's bit, but we could do with a programme of installing bus stops with more information about, you know, the next buses. And a very small point, I raised this when we had a pre-meeting yesterday, that the changes to the 254 route, which enabled it to provide a direct service from Cleckheaton to Huddersfield, much better than it was before. The change took place after the date that the authority is proposing to use as the base for franchising, and I'm asking that this change be put into that list, because as far as I can see, it has been successful and is very well used. Thank you.
Thank you, Fatima.
Thanks, Chair. So just a couple of reflections on this really comprehensive paper, Tim. The first one regarding the section that my colleague referred to regarding passenger experience. Do we capture any demography information about whether it impacts particular groups of people within society, say their, sexuality or ethnicity or faith, for example? Because we get a lot of feedback from the outreach work that the Mayor and I have been doing regarding people's experiences of transport being motivated by discrimination or hate crimes, and it'd be helpful to understand whether that is the case. The second bit was wondering whether there's an opportunity for us to build on the great work you're doing with the Safer Travel team about how to support individuals who are experiencing discrimination while using transport. So if a colleague's not available, an officer's not available, what does somebody do in that situation? How do they report it, etc.? And then the final one was just a reflection that I heard from the estates team in particular about the fact that quite often our transport hubs are one of the few places in society that are open all the time. And quite often as a consequence of that, we get people in society that are on the periphery of society seeking help and intervention from our staff with sometimes complex mental health situations, some safeguarding situations, etc. So I wondered, in the paper that you're referring to, Simon, is there an opportunity for us to maybe explore what work we could do with partners, say health, for example, to really support passenger experience in a tangible way, really maximising the relationships we've got?
Thank you. And Councillor Davis.
Thank you. I've got a few points, if that's okay. So firstly, on the real-time information units, I noticed that 200 are going to be replaced. I just wondered, are they faulty or could they be reused elsewhere? Because there's a lot of areas that don't have any, and they obviously are really valuable. So that was one question. Secondly, in terms of punctuality and reliability, what are the incentives to bus operators to be on time, and what are the consequences if they're not? Thirdly, as a new member, I was quite surprised that the cuts to school bus services haven't come to this committee. I know they're going to the main meeting tomorrow. I just wondered why that was. Bus shelters, I've recently had a bit of a spate of broken glass in my ward bus shelters. I just wondered, are they always glass or can they be plastic? Is there other alternatives? Because obviously that's an expense that you don't need. On buying tickets, it states that using an app or website is reduced by 3% buying for bus tickets, and it's up 3% for train tickets. I just wondered what the actual figures are, because that doesn't mean a lot. There's no actual numbers on what percentage of people do use the app or the website. And I think that might be it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. So particular questions on the RTIs and real-time information across two people there.
Yeah, no, so I think if we just try and take some of those in turn. So in terms of real-time distribution, I think it's probably fair to say, Councillor Pinnock, that there isn't equal distribution across the districts. I'm happy to look at where we could better try and address that balance. And again, through some of the work we're doing as part of bus franchising implementation programme, making sure we've got more consistent deployment of those units across the region is part of our ambition. We'll be setting more of that out in terms of our customer proposition work through bus franchising as well. They're not cheap to buy, they're not cheap to maintain, but we want to make sure that where there is need, and that might not necessarily be just on the basis of demand or boardings. There might be certain communities that are less able to use other means for passenger information, and therefore certain stops might be entirely reasonable to do that. So happy to look at that on a case-by-case basis. Just picking up the point around the demographics, Fatima, the research does contain all of that. We get very specific demographics in terms of respondents, so we can cut the data by all of those demographics. So again, very happy to sit down and talk you through what information we have available and introduce you to the team that manages that process. I think to your point, and again, it would be helpful to incorporate into that safety paper the role of bus stations as places of safety, and making sure that we do recognise the role that they play. By way of example, we've had a fairly serious incident at Huddersfield today, and a member of our staff intervened and helped a person in distress, you know, and that happens on a frequent basis, I'm sure ward members know. So I think it is important that we play our role, but also work with partners in making sure we offer that level of support. And Councillor Davis, just to pick up on some of your questions, most of those units are end of life, so they are either faulty or unrepairable in terms of their age and condition. If we are able to redeploy them, we will, but I suspect in large part that can't be done. Punctuality and reliability at the moment, operators are largely bound by the requirements of the Traffic Commissioner, so the Traffic Commissioner sets certain standards by which they need to achieve. Clearly under a franchise bus regime, we will be setting more prescriptive targets and consequences, or indeed, you know, encouragement ultimately in terms of trying to have operators perform to a high standard in terms of those matters. School services, we intentionally didn't want to prejudge the outcome of the conversation at the Combined Authority tomorrow and bring forward recommendations. So the point at which this paper was authored, clearly we were still in the process of authoring and finalising recommendations for the CA tomorrow. But no great surprise, I'm sure, following tomorrow's decision and at a future committee meeting here, we can come back and have a conversation about that, how that process will take place in future. In terms of shelters, predominantly Arglass in terms of their build, but again, in certain circumstances, if we're seeing high levels of ASB and vandalism, then we can replace them with alternative materials. And again, if there are particular problems that members have, then please let me know. Happy to do so. We're also in the process of renewing our shelter contract for 2026, and again can look at more robust but still appealing, and you know, we don't want shelters to be unwelcoming, so you know, making sure that they can still be seen through and people feel safe at them is clearly also important in their design. And finally, you had some questions around app numbers. I don't have them to hand, I'm afraid, but again, happy to either include them in the minutes if it works for members, or I can share them with you direct. Again, happy to take an action on that if that's helpful.
Did you answer Councillor Pinnock's question about the Cleckheaton Huddersfield service? Did we do that one?
Oh, with regard to
on the 254
franchising base.
So we're looking at it on a case-by-case basis. We are keen to continue to keep those kinds of services. What we're not going to do is be unswervingly prescriptive on saying that where services only existed in March 2024, those are the services that will then translate into the franchise network, because clearly there are things that we've enhanced since then that we'd like to retain. Members won't probably know, but I've recently approved an extension to a service called the T628T8 in Calderdale, an evening extension of that service. That didn't exist in March, but I fully intend to keep that, for example. So again, case-by-case basis, but you know, if it's proving beneficial, then it will almost certainly be retained. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Steele, I've got next.
Thank you, Chair. There's a table for the bus reliability performance in May 2025. With the X84, my old favourite, is like 9.1% of them were cancelled. And there's the excuse that people were running the Leeds Marathon and that was the large majority of it. But it's still a very, very unreliable service. There's a couple of things. The timetable, in particular, still seems to allow for roadworks between Burley and Ilkley, where a new roundabout was putting in, and now the buses, I'm told that the X84 can wait up to 8 minutes in Burley to continue its journey, so it keeps to the timetable. That seems a complete waste of resources to have a bus sat still. And I'd like to suggest that while you might not feel like you can restore it to the full half-hourly service rather than the every 40-minute service it is now, and there have been 3 timetable changes already in the last year. You look at changing the timetable again to take account of the changed circumstances of development, and also to perhaps add an extra service during peak hours when people are more likely to use it to travel into Leeds and from Leeds to Ilkley. There's 2 big developments on the route of Bramhope and Burley, and we should really be encouraging people to use the bus service, the drive, and use the park and drive to come into Leeds. It doesn't make sense that like sort of a reduced bus service would encourage people to drive to use a bus service. I'd also like to, I saw the figures on disabled access on buses and the usage was down by 1%. This, as a disabled person myself, this worries me, that like sort of people are being put off using buses by unreliability. The way people use buses has changed, but disabled people still need to be included in society. And if you've got a disabled bus pass, you can't use it before 9:30. If you need to get to a job or a job interview, or you want to do volunteering work, it seems mad to exclude people from being able to travel before 9:30. And finally, there used to be a Transdev bus, the 62, that drove along the Wharf Valley to Keighley, which was really useful for my constituents for appointments at Airedale Hospital. And I'd really like that to be looked at being reinstated. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you very much. I'll go to Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just moving to Appendix 2. I've got a couple of quick points and then a question for Ariva. But the first point was just building on what Councillor Firth said earlier in terms of the moving from a top 5 to a top 8 or 10, because otherwise it's always going to be the same. I would echo that. Having 8 or 10 would, if it's possible, would be useful to have. The more data we have, the better informed we will be, and the more we'll learn. Also, I raised this point before on the way the reliability data is presented. The target for reliability is 99.5%, but in the tables you're giving the percentage of services that are cancelled. So it would be useful for understanding if those were consistent with each other. I just think that would improve things. And now to Ariva. For the benefit of those wonderful people listening at home, at the back of this report we have a catalogue of month-by-month breakdown of the best and worst bus services in West Yorkshire, and we're supposed to have an accompanying explanation for the services that aren't doing so well. But repeatedly, Ariva did not comment on the 102 service. Hang on. Ariva did not provide comments on the 271 or the 476. Ariva did not provide any feedback on the 271 or the 195A. Ariva did not provide response to the 444, the 195A or the 156. So I just wanted to ask Ariva why they don't think they have to explain the reason for the god-awful service that some of our residents have to put up with.
Thank you very much. So a few questions there. I'll go first of all to Tim around bus to Keighley and disability 930 that Councillor Steele answered.
Yeah, I mean, I'll have to have a separate conversation with Transit about the removal of that service. I'm afraid I'm not particularly familiar with it, Chair, but I'm happy to have a conversation about the reasons for its withdrawal and see if there's anything we can do working with Transdev to consider reinstatement. In terms of pre-930 and disabled travel, I think there's a few things I'd say on this. We clearly recognise that can be a challenge, and we should be encouraging disabled people to work, and clearly a pre-930 restriction doesn't consider or help that. As part of our fares ticketing and retail strategy work, again ahead of franchising, we are considering what enhancements to our statutory concessions might be possible, and that is already a well-known concession that we are looking at. So again, please give us time to consider those, and we will come back to you in due course.
Data?
In terms of data from Councillor McLaughlin, happy to include 10. Yeah, that's absolutely fine, no problem whatsoever. Equally, your point about reversing the percentages to reliability, again, it's a presentational issue, so no issues in making that change. So thank you for that suggestion.
Thank you. And Ariva, obviously Councillor McLaughlin highlighted some particular issues there. Do you want to address some of those?
Yeah, I think happy to. I think within Ariva lately there's been a reshuffle of staff, so if there's been a missed responses, we'll happily go back through the report and provide responses for anything this week. And again, if there's concerns over individual services, happily pick them up after this meeting. But what's really pleasing when you look at the data of certainly the Wakefield area and the wider Ariva business, performance is probably at its best it's been in 2 years now, and that's happened in the space of the last 2 to 3 months. So there's significant improvement on the services, albeit it's not where it needs to be, but certainly we review them on a monthly basis with authority members and councillors, and happily share that with you, because pleasingly it's on a positive trend which continues to improve and needs to be fair.
I mean, some of that obviously is because the services have been cut, so therefore the reliability probably improves as a result, doesn't it? But and obviously that's not a position we want to be in. We want to be expanding services and also maintaining reliability. Can I just go to first bus about the X84 as well, please, that Councillor Steele raised?
Yeah, so our stats are actually looking really positive for the X84 since the last service change on the 18th of May. So over the last 13 weeks, our start time adherence, so starting on our time point, is 94%, and our on-time performance is 84%, so just a percent off the benchmark that we would be looking to meet. So obviously there's room for improvement there, and we're always looking to improve. We always monitor the data and make sure that we're on top of what's happening in terms of our timetables. Are we leaving too much lax in the middle? Is there too much at the start, too much at the end? So if we do find that in our next service change there is a reason to change it based on the data, then we will consider that at the time. But so far the stats are looking really positive for us, so that's what I would say on that.
To make sure that we've caught up on some of those individual services. Before we close this item, I just want to go to each of the bus operators, because we've had patronage come up on a regular basis. We can sort of, I know First Bus has talked about that a little bit, but if the others can also address that, and safety on buses, and make sure, you know, people of all demographics feel safe on buses. It's what we all, obviously goes hand in hand with patronage, doesn't it, really? So Ariva, did you want to go for that first? And any other things that you think we should be aware of that you're doing that might affect buses in West Yorkshire?
Yeah, happy to. I guess if I take the passenger safety foremost, whether it be in bus stations or actually, you know, travelling on the services, I think clearly there's some really good examples around the country of where schemes like TFGM or Liverpool City Region, that investment in joint working around PCSOs and what you can do to support that, but using it really data-led. Certainly, you know, I'm new to the area, coming and covering. I think there's opportunity and there's examples that we can hopefully help share from wider audiences across the UK about how you use limited resources, really targeted to hit certain areas. So I think that's something that we'd be really keen to help progress, and certainly happy to have conversations on that. And it's proven to have significant impact and results. I think driver training and staff training is crucial, whether that be the drivers in service, and that's something I know we do as a company, but you can never do enough. And certainly using bus stations, and clearly we operate the one in Wakefield, and having those conversations about making them safe spaces. And since then we've spent money on investing in Wakefield bus station to actually house police officers in the bus station to help with antisocial behaviour. So that'll actually go live in the next couple of weeks when the building works have been finished. So, you know, there are improvements to make, there's opportunities to improve things. So keen to work with you on that. I think when you look at bus patronage from the Ariva network, we're slowly seeing a recovery. Clearly service delivery, as councillors have pointed out, hasn't historically been where it needs to be. We're seeing that recovery now in patronage, the reduction in customer complaints and the improvement in punctuality and reliability. But we are seeing across the network, circa similar to what First have highlighted, around the 3% overall patronage reduction. And when you look at that on a national basis, it's quite similar. I think we're seeing that across the UK. So West Yorkshire is no different in that aspect. I think the other elements from an Ariva point of view to update on, you know, it's really pleasing to say this week actually for the first time we're back in Barnsley Road from a bus operations point of view. So the fleet's now housed back in Barnsley Road after probably 6 to 7 months of issues, it's fair to say. With that again should see a significant improvement on service delivery in the Wakefield area. So, you know, the other element, it's pleasing to say, is as we move into the peak around September time, the business will be back to full establishment. So we have had to make some network cuts, which were previously talked about. They're now in. But with that, there's been a significant improvement in driver establishment. And again, that should see a marked improvement on service delivery. I'm keen to work with the authority and members on what we can do to stabilise services and potentially bring back further improvements going into the new year.
And any thoughts on patronage?
Sorry, it was around the remarks of, again, we're seeing a recovery in patronage as service improvement kicks in, but we're seeing around that 3 to 4% reduction across the network on a volume basis, whether that be services that have seen negative service performance or services that have been consistently performing. So again, if we're looking to attract and encourage patronage, it is about what my colleagues in First have said about enhancements on the highway, enhancements in fleet, and also enhancements in punctuality, reliability. But the one thing the customer says to us continually, and that's borne out by the Transport Focus survey, is punctuality is the number one for customers at the minute. It used to be fares, that's significantly reduced with the national scheme coming in of £2, and obviously the £2.50 offer in West Yorkshire. But punctuality and reliability is what the customer's after.
Okay, thank you. Megan, did you want to?
Yes, so just regarding the safety issue, I think that it's something that we're super passionate about in First, and we're always keen to be involved in partnerships around how, particularly around young women and girls and in the diversity space, how can we start to improve, number one, how we report on this so we can really drill into those figures, but also how can we partner with external providers to help us manage that on our network. So we've recently launched a partnership with StrutSafe, which is about when you get off a bus, if you feel like you want to have someone to talk to, you can give them a phone call and speak to someone as you walk home, and we advertise that across all of our buses on the network. We continuously work with everyone that we can around this. We are getting some new ticket machines across our fleet in October, and some of you will know that we trialled some safety measures on our ticket machines a couple of months ago, which was around the driver's enhanced reporting ability for any ASB on the buses. It was drilled into what it was, who it was, and allowed us to drill a little bit more into that diversity issue. So definitely something that we are really keen on supporting and working with partners on, and particularly the Combined Authority. I think I've already commented on the patronage issue. I suppose wider news across First, I've mentioned we're getting new ticket machines, which is always a positive thing. It improves the passenger journey. It means that things will move a bit quicker, a bit swifter, hopefully improving that punctuality target. In terms of lost mileage, year on year, we've got a 17% improvement across all of our services. Our driver establishment at the moment, it's improved by 27%, so we're operating about 106% what we need, which obviously is driving that improvement around our lost mileage. We are just really keen to continue to support on any technological advancements. As the guys at Arriva said, it is all about our NPS, and our data from the passengers on our buses is saying that it is all about punctuality. So our next service change, which is happening at the end of August, is based on that. You will see us targeting those bottom 10% services where our on-time performance isn't where we want it to be, and we'll be retiming those services to try and improve that. Thank you.
Okay, that's lovely, and hopefully we do that with the Combined Authority so they know which services those are, or we should all be doing partnership. And Henri, from a...
Yes. So just the first element on punctuality. So we have been working a lot to improve our punctuality at all region level. And we really started to see some result starting from April. So normally you should start seeing some massive improvement of punctuality. I think in some services we have increased by 10 points our punctuality. So one example is Flyer. I know that this is one of the service that some of you are really looking at. Today at Flyer we are above 90%. On our first departure we are above 94%. In June we were a bit lower than that because we are still waiting for the new buses. We have the whole fleet that has been renewed in June in Flyer, so you should start seeing that on the street now. They are completely new buses. And so, but the change that we did in June affected a bit our punctuality. So we were at 87%, which is still a good performance. So we'll continue to improve that in July and the following months, and I hope that the new buses will continue to sustain Flyer properly. In terms of patronage, it's true that at UK level we can see a decrease of patronage. I think one of the major elements is the end of the 2-point fare cap that went from 2 to 3. This is a 50% increase. Elasticity, worst case scenario, was we are going to lose 14% of our ridership. Today we are only losing 6%. So we still have, I think the network is still strong, and despite the increase of fare cap, I think the system is quite solid. To go back a bit more in detail on Wika, we had the fare cap impact, so the 2 points to 2.5, which is not neutral. We had the snow. So in February we had 10 days of snow. That impacted by 30% our ridership during 10 days. So that's for us, just at Transdev level, we are more or less saying that we have lost 100,000 passengers in 10 days. So this is part of the explanation. And I will say one last point, but I don't know how Wika has calculated the elements, but we have one less day compared to 24 because of the 29th of February. So that's 1 point impact. So just to end up, I think patronage in Wika is still strong. I will be a bit more positive than what I've heard here, because despite the snow, despite 1 day less, and despite an increase of 25% of the fare cap, we are still at 3% impact, and it's much better than the other region.
That's positive. Councillor Firth, you indicated, but a very short question, because obviously got to go on to rail next.
Just wanted to ask about the flyer, and you said there's going to be new buses, and I also wanted to ask about the 662. Are they going to be electrified then? Because the 662, I understand you got funding for that some time ago, and they're still not electrified.
Alors, 662, donc Keighley to Bradford, shuttle. They will be all electrified by the end of September, so we are still working with Wika. We have all the go from the DNO, which was one of our main issues, the connection to the grid. So we are getting connected mid of August, and with all the tests and the additional connections, I think best case scenario will be mid of September, base case scenario will be end of September, and the whole shuttle will be electrified. And we will have additional buses to run also on Keighley network to provide additional electric type of services. And we are also looking on the weekends to see if we can improve the usage of the electric buses in Keighley to make sure that we can use as much as possible those new buses. But they are on track. I'm sorry for the delay. All the buses, we have 15 buses, 13 are in Coventry today. We are still lacking 2 that are supposed to come in the next 2 weeks. And the grid connection will be available from the 18th of August normally.
Now, Councillor Amjad Zaman wants to very, very brief. Can you brief answer because we really need to move on?
Thank you, Chair. This is interesting. I'm a Central Ward councillor, and the bus station is Central Ward in Keighley anyway. So you're bringing out these new buses. But what marketing have you done within the Keighley community and the wider community about your buses? In the olden days, when Graham was the managing director for Transair Communications, he actually would call the district councils in. They would actually make a show of it and get something up to the community. This is brilliant news for Keighley and surrounding areas, but nobody knows that you've got these buses coming out. Can we do something working with you so we can promote this and hopefully more people will use the buses and it's benefiting the environment as well at the same time?
So can we take that off? Can you stay until after the meeting and then follow that up with? Because I think that's a good idea. Perhaps do something offline afterwards. Is that okay? Thank you very much. So moving on to the transport operations rail. Obviously we've got our rail operators here as well. Can I, Simon, or who is this? Dave. Very brief.
I'll give a quick 2-minute overview of the report and some key points. In terms of passenger trends, Northern has shown a 9% year-on-year growth. Customer satisfaction is up a couple of percent, 69%, and has shown strong leisure growth of around 10%. As well as that, there's starting to be more of a push around commuters, so some ticketing initiatives around season tickets that Northern are pushing at the moment is significant. TPE, 6% passenger growth, which is good news. Both TPE and Northern, while not fully resolved, have much more stable industrial relations than they did in the past, which is improving the service overall. LNER growth up by 7% year on year. And if we look at Leeds Station, that's now at 88% of the pre-pandemic levels. Weekends showing 114%. So there's still continuing strong growth there and recovery. In terms of service changes, for the recent May timetable changes, a couple of highlights from that include the strengthening of some trains on the Leeds to Skipton Ilkley services to 6 cars, which made a big difference for commuters and travellers, and also the new Bradford Forster Square platform that was open, plus the London LNER services, a lot more of those, which is good news. In Para 3.9, we set out some of the wider service changes coming up in December. It's important to flag those early because a lot of those relate to the temporary changes due to Transpennine route upgrade work, including, as we've said a number of times before, Ravensthorpe Station being remained closed for up to 3 years for works. And there's also the Northern Service Leeds, Wakefield, Westgate to Sheffield fast trains due to come in on an hourly service, which will supplement the cross-country service, giving an effective 30-minute quick service between those places. In terms of performance, we're still seeing more improvements on Northern and TPE, what's called time to 3. That's sort of how much they keep to time overall. Northern are up to 80%, 80.7% from 78.2, and TPE are up 4% at 68% as well. Cancellations in our region, Northern are at 3.2% and TPE about 5%. And what's the P codings, which is trains which are effectively cancelled the evening before, which you may remember we had a significant number of those 18 months or so ago. They're at practically 0 overall, so there's some good news there for greater certainty for passengers. 316 reference TPE driver training, which is paying dividends, and again that's seeing an 80% decrease in cancellations as a result of that. But we are seeing some issues around the short forming trains which are publicised as being a certain length but are not coming out at that length. About 11% of Northern trains are of that type at the moment, but only about 0.5% of TPE trains. In terms of passenger network enhancements, there's a recent spending review of confirmation of the 3.5 billion to continue on with the TRU works, which is great news. The report also gives a brief update on the White Rose Station, which was highlighted through the May Combined Authority report. We're still working through the issues to get that remobilised, and we'll be providing an update to the Combined Authority in September on this. And we'll be engaging with scrutiny ahead of this as well in terms of what lessons learned there are in respect of White Rose and wider delivery of stations. In 3.28, there's some really important information around future TRU, Transparent Route Upgrade disruption plans, including impacts on Huddersfield, Murfield at weekends, Dayton, Dewsbury, and the weekend between Leeds and York, and also highlighting the end of year issues between Leeds and Church Fenton. There has been some great working on passenger information with the TRU team, and we'll ensure we continue to push and support our messages for passengers during the ongoing disruption. Finally, on accessibility schemes, there have been some ongoing lift issues at Garforth Station, which had recent accessibility improvements. At Menston, there's been good progress around the accessibility scheme there to put a new bridge and lifts in, with completion in spring. And Network Rail have taken on delivery of Todmorden accessibility improvements from Northern. We still are working through the issues at Pontefract Monkhill, which encountered difficulties when Northern had to remove their contractor from the scheme for the Access for All. Discussions ongoing with the rail industry to understand how we can assist in helping to bring this forward. So I'll leave it at that, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Morley.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Welcome the announcements of the new services for the district to the Wakefield district, and I'll also thank you for the comments you've made regarding Monkhill as well. I know it's the challenges there, but it's something we do need to move forward on. Not in the report, but it would be remiss if I didn't just say a massive thank you to this committee, to officers and to Northern, to Darren for the announcement of Rob Burrows, a train being named after him. The initial idea came from the Castleford Civic Society, and it was raised at this committee, and I know a lot of people raised it, but I think what a great way to honour Rob and his fantastic legacy for the West Yorkshire and for the greater country in Yorkshire and all that. So just to say a massive thank you for Northern for doing that.
Hear, hear. Thank you very much, Councillor Morley. It's very well deserved, is that. Councillor Crook next, Councillor Coughlin and Councillor Davis. Brief question.
Thank you very much. No one will be surprised as a Kirklees representative that I've picked out there's a timetable improvement on the Penistone line mentioned in these papers, a small step in the journey that we need to make to improve that line. Also like to thank everyone for their ongoing support with this, for lobbying for this project. I mean, the development of the OBC is now well underway, and it's, you know, a good step towards a meaningful improvement on the line and of strategic importance in connecting the West Yorkshire and South Yorkshire combined authorities, and in bringing that line out of the 80s where it is still stuck.
Thank you. Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Chair. I welcome the report. Thank you. Just a quick couple of points on the appendix and the figures in the appendix. But I've asked this before as well. Could we figure out a way to put the P coding figure in the tables as not just in the text, so that we don't have to, because it is a cancelled service. It's slightly different, which is why it's called something different, but it should be included in the figures. But very welcome news that it's significantly down from where it used to be. But also the time to 15 information seems to be missing. throughout the appendix. It's mentioned on the page 1 of the appendix as one of the measures in the sort of glossary of explanations, but then none of that data is actually present anywhere in the report. I'm just wondering where it is.
Councillor David.
Thank you. I was going to ask the same question, but one more. Northern continues to be affected by train crew shortages. We've been told this since COVID. I just wonder why that's still the case.
Councillor Firth, I think you were indicating.
Thank you, Chair. Can I thank David, first of all, for it almost galloped through this paper, but it's all good news, or just about good news. But I'd just like to raise with the operators 3.19 and 320 in the agenda about the rolling stock situation, which isn't getting any better. And I know Northern are going to procure a new fleet in the not too distant future. But in the interim, they're going to struggle with what we've got. And can I ask, are you confident that we can actually manage, that you can manage the situation going forward?
Sorry, Chair, what was the last point?
Services, wasn't it? Was it Sunday services?
It was staff shortages.
Thank you, Councillor Morley, for the kind words about Rob Burrow and the train naming and the Motor Neuron Disease Association that we will be sponsoring and obviously wrapping our train. Further details will be released near the time when we have a full plan. I think a couple of mentions on the rolling stock. Given our cancellations, and we've obviously been through a performance improvement plan, we're cancelling about 3.2% of trains. Some of our best performing routes, Leeds to Ilkley, Leeds to Bradford, are performing at 98% without cancellations. And I think the 6-car introduction again has been a really a key item for the customers of West Yorkshire. So we're not seeing, we've improved, we are improving, we continue to do so. So we're not seeing the short forming as hugely detrimental to the train plan and the operation, which is great because we're looking at crowding data. We also use advanced purchasing to try to encourage customers onto less well-utilised services. So that's all the data intel and led. From the fleet position, as you're all aware, we have a procurement plan for a new fleet, which will see all of our older diesel trains eliminated and gone by 2040. Now, obviously that takes time, and we'll see the introduction of these new trains by around 2030. And it's really worth noting that in 2020 we did purchase 100 new trains, and you'll have seen these out on the network, the 195s and the 331 rolling stock. So we are working on this. However, it takes time. Some of our rolling stock is 41 years old, the 150 fleet, which the Penistone line will have seen and testament to. As a former driver, I loved the 150s, so but from a customer perspective, they're not ideal. So I think shortages, we're managing that. It's not brilliant when you have old rolling stock, and like any old car, I suppose you need more maintenance than you would with new. The Sunday situation, we still need a mandate for our conductor colleagues on Western Central to work a 7-day railway. So until that mandate is in place, we will continue to have to work around the volunteer railway that we see on Western Central. In the east, where we are here, we don't have that same problem. However, services like the York Blackpools are adversely affected, especially on a Sunday, by our lack of a 7-day agreement with the RMT and conductors. We're working on that. You know, we've got a rest day working agreement with ASLEF, we've got a rest day working agreement with the RMT, but ultimately we need the 7-day railway to be contractual, and that will see the service provision where our customers demand and actually and completely correctly deserve.
Thank you very much. I don't know if TPE, do you want to say something briefly on your services before we go on to the next item? Briefly.
Yes, thank you, Chair. On Councillor Firth, paragraph 3.19, the main issues there relate to the Class 397s, which predominantly operate on the West Coast Main Line. So I think this section is taking complete data across company. Oh, sorry. Let me move my stuff around. Does that help at all? Yeah, a little bit better. Okay, so thank you, Councillor Firth, for the comments. The comments in that paragraph regarding the 397s, I think it's the information is relating to the entire network we're operating, and though that particular fleet works on the West Coast Main Line, so it doesn't come into that section. The comment about the 185 is obviously that is a regular type of train that we bring through this part of the network. We've had a range of isolated different faults which we worked through with Siemens on that train. Nothing prolonged and nothing significant in terms of wider concern, but they have an impact which has had to be addressed, which has had an unusual effect in terms of increasing train faults. But let me give you the assurance that ourselves and our rolling stock suppliers are on top of it and trying to keep any delays that happen from a rolling stock problem to a minimum.
Lovely, thank you very much. So we note the rail report. Then we move on to the West Yorkshire Local Transport Plan, which we've seen a lot at this committee, I have to say. Is there anything we need to do further at this committee?
Thank you, Councillor Hinchcliffe. I think the reason for bringing this back to this committee this week is we are due to go out to consultation starting next Tuesday, and for a 12-week period from that point onwards. There is a briefing tomorrow at 4:30 with the Mayor and all ward councillors across West Yorkshire to kind of get your kind of involvement and your support to help promote and spread the word. The main reason for bringing it back to this committee is just to note a slight change in the policies that were put to the Combined Authority on the 19th of June, and to just bring that to this committee for noting. Really, we've added 3 additional policies which sit kind of over and above. The first one is really baking in kind of the need to move towards sustainable modes in a very clear, simple policy. The second one is baking in the decision taken on bus franchising in March last year to make sure we have that as a key priority. And thirdly, baking in kind of our need to kind of move towards a programme for rail reform and strategic rail. That was one that was previously sitting within our narrative, but given where we are now in terms of the launch of the White Rose Rail Report, we felt it suitable to put that into a policy in itself. So that was the main reason for bringing it back today, and to make the committee aware of the incoming consultation to start next week.
And you want our help in spreading that far and wide, by the sounds of it, which is what the recommendation says. Any questions on this? Councillor McLaughlin?
Just very quickly, Chair, less of a question, more of a thank you for listening at the consultation events. I spent some time with you there, didn't I, Helen, last year. I can see responses to issues that people raised in this document and in these policies. So thank you for listening. It is greatly appreciated.
Very good. Thank you very much, Helen and team. Very good. Any more questions? Are we happy, therefore, to accept these recommendations, which includes us doing some work and actually going out and telling people about this? Can I recommend that? All in favour, please show. That is carried. Thank you very much. So, final paper is transport policy update, including the EV charging, which I think is going through all the local authorities at the moment, isn't it? So everybody should be familiar with this.
Yeah, thank you very much. Just to, before I come on to that approval, if I may, the linking point, if you like, between the local transport plan paper just and the transport policy update is the talking transport sessions that we have just concluded the round of those on Monday in Wakefield. We've had some really good discussions across the region, and do just want to thank the engagement leads for really helping us to move those and promote those. So there've been some really good sessions. So thank you. Onto the actual paper, because that was kind of a timing thing. So the EV strategy was adopted by Transport Committee to our current transport plan in April. What we're asking for here is adoption of the on-street guidance that we said back in April we would want to bring to a future committee when we've just done a little bit more work with your officers. So that is what we're putting here, if we could have that as an approval through this committee.
Thank you. Any questions? Debbie, Councillor Davies, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. 3 questions, if that's okay. So, many tourist streets have narrow pavements, narrow roads, very limited parking. If you introduce build-outs for charging points, is that going to impact on the amount of parking available? That was one question. Secondly, have you considered the impact of more street furniture on blind and partially sighted people? And thirdly, in the report, there's just a brief mention of other developing technologies, but this does seem to be something that's happening quite frequently. I've read about portable electric chargers, hydrogen cars that generate their own electricity. Do you think we could get overtaken by new technology by putting this in?
We love hydrogen in Bradford. Councillor McLaughlin?
Just very quickly, Chair, just this slight error in wording, and if we're going to adopt the report, we want it to be right. On page 113, it says in one of the bullet points, these considerations may not be known at the point an application. So the point, presumably the point of application. Yeah.
Thank you. Good spot.
Anybody else? Any questions before we go for answers? No. So Simon, Helen. Sorry, Helen.
Thank you. Thank you. Really good questions. So this has been part of the discussion we've been having with districts about how we bring this forward in the context of the funding we have available through the Levi Fund. That's why we're adopting this as guidance, because we need local authorities to take the decision as they're applying the infrastructure to that kind of environment that it's being rolled out to, and making sure they maximise the locations and think about that as a decision taken locally in the context of the Highway Authority. Because we're not the Highway Authority, we can't take those decisions.
It's quite a detailed policy document, isn't it, that we all need to go through, and obviously our highways officers of all the authorities have been working together on this. Sam, did you want to say something?
I just wanted to reassure members in particular that if I refer members to the guiding principles that are within the guidelines here, there are a set of very, very clear principles around us ensuring that there's no obstruction of the footway through the mechanisms that are developed. We continue to prioritise use of our footways by all members of the community, recognising the challenges that the different members of the community will face. So just to reassure members that principle is absolutely built into the advice that we're giving to authorities here.
And we all know we've got in our inboxes, we've got residents who want this kind of infrastructure, yes, don't they? So it's about how we adapt with the times. So with that then, I'm happy to recommend those recommendations. Councillor Carroll second those. All those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. That is carried, and that, I think, is the end of the meeting today. Thank you very much. Did you have anything to say?
There's a little bit more on the paper.
All right, what was it?
So there's 2 more items in the paper. One
We've already approved it, obviously.
Yeah, that
okay,
specific bit. But the other items in there, which was just an update around the spending review, which I wasn't necessarily going to go through, but we haven't had a meeting since that was launched, and the infrastructure strategy, and the consolidated active travel fund, which will be on as a change request at the Combined Authority tomorrow. We just wanted to thank the committee for all their support in helping us get to the point where that goes to the committee tomorrow.
absolutely. We've done workshops on the active travel routes, etc. before, and there'll be more of that through the year. Obviously, it's a new committee, but there will be other workshops to do when we develop policy going forward, which is very useful, actually, for the Combined Authority. So thank you very much, everybody, for your attendance this afternoon, and I'll see you at the next meeting.